Yo, what's good? Amateur Lore here, and today we're back with some more draft content. More specifically, looking at every team in the SUNBELT Conference's highest NFL draft pick since 2000. Before we jump into the video, make sure to comment down below one of your hot takes for this upcoming college football season. I want to start rolling out some hot takes for the 2025 college football season, so yeah. Anyway, make sure you like and sub. These videos take a while to make, but yeah, let's jump right into the video. First team that we're taking a look at in the SUNBELT is the App State Mountaineers. And while they do not have any first-round picks in their long draft history, I find it very impressive that App State has managed to produce 18 NFL draft picks since 2000. And before we name their highest NFL draft pick since 2000, I want to shout out arguably their best player of all time, linebacker Dexter Coakley, who'd be selected back in 1997 in the 3rd round, 65th overall by the Dallas Cowboys. He was legit, playing 10 years in the NFL, making 3 Pro Bowls. Alright, so for the Mountaineers' highest NFL draft pick since 2000, we have to go back to 2012 when the St. Louis Rams would pick wide receiver Brian Quick in the 2nd round, 33rd overall. He would play 7 years in the NFL, never really having a breakout season, but he was a solid depth piece for a couple years and definitely made a bag, so not bad. Next team up in the SUNBELT is the Arkansas State Red Wolves. And while they don't have as many draft picks since 2000 as the previous school we covered, they make up for that with their high quality of picks. For instance, I have to shout out linebacker Demario Davis, who'd get picked back in 2012 in the 3rd round, 77th overall by the New York Jets. He isn't the Red Wolves' highest draft pick since 2000, but this stud has played 13 years in the NFL and is still currently playing, as well as being an All-Pro 5 times in the last 6 years. I don't want to jump the gun, but he might be a potential Hall of Famer. Let me know down below in the comments how y'all feel about that. Okay, so for the Red Wolves' actual highest NFL draft pick since 2000, we have to go back to 2008 when the Minnesota Vikings would select defensive back Tyrell Johnson in the 2nd round, 43rd overall. He would only play in the league for 5 years, never really going too crazy, but I'll never hate on a dude who made it to the show, especially from a non-Power 5 school. Leaving the state of Arkansas, we head over to South Carolina for the next team up in the SUNBELT, the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers. And if you're like me and had no idea what the hell a Chanticleer was, it's a rooster. Alright, so before we talk about Coastal Carolina's highest NFL draft pick since 2000, I have to mention their best alumni up to date, which I had no idea Brady played for this school before making this video, but defensive back Josh Norman, who is best known for his little back and forth with OBJ, would be picked back in 2012 in the 5th round, 143rd overall to the Carolina Panthers. And I also have to mention another player before we move on, that being the tight end for the Baltimore Ravens, Isaiah Likely, as he is also a Coastal Carolina alumni and would be drafted back in 2022 in the 4th round to the Baltimore Ravens. Alright, so for the Chanticleers' highest NFL draft pick since 2000, we have to go all the way back to 2008, when the Cincinnati Bengals would select wide receiver Jerome Simpson in the 2nd round, 46th overall. He would play 7 years in the NFL, bouncing around between a couple of teams, with the most notable thing he did during his NFL career being 2 700-plus receiving yard seasons. Next team up in the SUNBELT Conference is the Georgia Southern Eagles, and here's something I bet majority of you never knew. Did you know Adrian Peterson went to Georgia Southern? No, not that AP. I'm talking about the one that got drafted back in 2002 by the Chicago Bears. Okay, jokes aside, Georgia Southern probably has one of the least impressive draft histories out of any team in the SUNBELT, only producing a total of 10 NFL draft picks since 2000, with none of them being higher than the 3rd round, which takes us back to 2013 for the Eagles' highest NFL draft pick since 2000, when the Dallas Cowboys would select defensive back J.J. Wilcox in the 3rd round, 80th overall. JJ played in the league for 6 years, never really being able to find a home, but big props to bro for being Georgia Southern's highest NFL draft pick of all time. Wow, so I know I said Georgia Southern's draft history was unimpressive, but staying in the Peach State for the next school in the SUNBELT, the Georgia Southern Panthers, they've literally only had 4 players drafted into the NFL. But I know a big reason for that is because they've only been playing high-level Division I football since 2014. And before we move on to their highest NFL draft pick since 2000, I have to shout out one of their best alumni of all time, kicker Will Lutz. Don't judge me, bro. The pickings were slim. He went undrafted back in 2016 and would get scooped up by the Saints. He is still kicking as we speak, so shout out to Will. Alright, so for the Panthers' highest NFL draft pick since 2000, we have to go back to 2012, when the Oakland Raiders would select defensive end Christo. I'm going to put his name up on the screen because I really can't pronounce it. In the 6th round, 189th overall. Anyway, Christo would only play 3 years in the league, never putting it together, but at least he made it to the show. Leaving the state of Georgia, we head over to Virginia for the next team up in the SUNBELT, the James Madison Dukes. And even though they've only had 6 players drafted since 2000, I still find that stat very impressive when you consider they've only been playing high-level FBS ball since 2022. And before we go over their highest NFL draft pick since 2000, I have to shout out arguably their best player in program history, wide receiver Gary Clark, who's also their first player to ever be drafted. Would get selected all the way back in 1984 in the 2nd round, 55th overall by the Washington Redskins. Gary has been one of the better wide receivers in NFL history, winning 2 Super Bowls with the Redskins, being an All-Pro several times, as well as finishing his career ranked 46th all-time in receiving yards. Excellent career. And while that is extremely impressive, he is not their highest NFL draft pick since 2000, although he is their highest draft pick of all time. Anyway, we have to go back to 2000 when running back Curtis Keaton would get picked up by the Bengals in the 4th round, 97th overall. He never really was able to put it together in the NFL in his 3-year career, but shout out to him. Next team up in the SUNBELT is the Louisiana Raging Cajun. And I just want to say thank you guys so much for getting Billy Napier right. I know a lot of Gator fans are still iffy about Coach Billy, but I'm on board with him. And to any Gator fans going to the Florida vs. Miami game this year, catch me there with the custom Billy Napier jersey on. Alright, so right off the bat, the Raging Cajuns draft history stood out to me, having 48 players drafted all time, with 19 of them coming since 2000. So for Louisiana's highest draft pick since 2000, it's also arguably their best player of all time, as well, which takes us back to 2003, when the Chicago Bears would select defensive back Charles Tillman in the second round, 35th overall. This brother was a beast on the field, playing 13 years in the league, making 2 Pro Bowls and being voted as an All-Pro first team in 2012. Amazing career. This next team is arguably the best draft history in the SUNBELT Conference, the Marshall Thundering Herd. And before we dive into it, a little shout out to defensive end Mike Green, who would be drafted in the most recent NFL draft by the Baltimore Ravens in the second round, 59th overall. And he hasn't played a snap yet in the league, but he got picked up by the Ravens, and they know what they're doing when it comes to the draft, so good luck to him. Alright, so first things first, let's knock out the obvious GOAT from Marshall, Randy Moss, as he would be selected back in 1998 in the first round, 21st overall by the Vikings. And come on, he's considered one of the best wideouts of all time, making 6 Pro Bowls and being first team All-Pro 4 times. Anyway, for Marshall's highest NFL draft pick since 2000, we have to go back all the way to 2003, when the Jacksonville Jaguars would select quarterback Brian Leftwich 7th overall. He played 12 years in the NFL, splitting time with a couple of different teams, never really living up to a 7th overall pick. However, he would win a Super Bowl with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers back in 2020 as an offensive coordinator, so that's pretty lit. Alright, from a team that's draft history was absolutely loaded, we rotate over to the Old Dominion Monarchs, where we find a slight drop-off, as they've only had 5 players drafted into the NFL in their entire history. Although you have to consider they've been playing FBS Division I ball since 2014. So before we talk about their highest draft pick since 2000, I have to mention their best player to date, Tyler Heineke, who'd go undrafted in 2017, and he's had a pretty decent career as a backup quarterback in the NFL, as he is still kicking it currently with the Chargers backing up Justin Herbert, so that's pretty cool. But for the Monarchs' highest draft pick since 2000, we have to go back to 2019, when defensive end O'Shane Zimenez, I definitely pronounced that wrong, so I'll put it up on screen, would get selected in the 3rd round, 95th overall by the New York Giants. He's been a pretty alright death piece in his 6-year NFL career. Latest news I could find on him was he played ball with the Pats in 2024 but was placed on injured reserve. I hope he has a healthy recovery and keeps his job in the league. From Virginia, we head down to South Alabama for the next team up in the SUNBELT Conference, the South Alabama Jaguars. And this school is pretty similar to Old Dominion in the fact that they're toddlers to FBS high-level college football, joining back in 2012. So it should be expected that the Jags have only had 4 players drafted in their entire history. But I will say there is some quality in there, such as wide receiver Jalen Tolbert, who I believe is currently a Dallas Cowboy, and is coming off one of his best seasons to date. Somebody else I'm sure some of you recognize is tight end Gerald Everett, who is South Alabama's highest NFL draft pick to date and their first, as he would get drafted back in 2017 in the 2nd round, 44th overall to the Los Angeles Chargers. He has been a pretty solid NFL tight end, being productive in his 8 years he's been in the league so far. He's currently a free agent, but I'm sure he'll get scooped up soon. Damn, no cap, Southern Mississippi's draft history shocked me, having 30 players drafted into the NFL since 2000, but surprisingly not a single one of them were first rounders. Before we talk about their highest draft pick since 2000, I have to mention their best player of all time. And although he may be liable to do some shady shit with your charity funds, or send you unwanted dick pics, pause, Brett Favre is without a doubt one of the best quarterbacks in NFL history. Alright, that's all the flowers you get from me, Brett Bankman-Fried. So for the Golden Eagles' highest NFL draft pick since 2000, we have to go all the way back to 2000, when the Philadelphia Eagles would select wide receiver Todd Pinkston in the 2nd round, 36th overall. He would have a solid NFL career, but it would get derailed due to injuries. But he was productive when he was active. Next team up in the SUNBELT is the Texas State Bobcats. And while they've had over 42 players drafted into the NFL in their entire history, Texas State has only had 6 players drafted since 2000 and 0 players drafted into the NFL in the last 9 years, which kind of shocked me because the Bobcats football team is coming off back-to-back 8-win seasons. So I just kind of assumed that some players would have gotten drafted recently, but I guess not. Maybe they will in the 2026 NFL draft though. Alright, so for Texas State's highest NFL draft pick since 2000, we have to go back to the 2015 season when the San Diego Chargers would pick cornerback Craig Major in the 3rd round, 83rd overall. Craig would play 4 years in the NFL, never being able to put it all together, but shout out to him for making the show. I had no idea the next team up in the SUNBELT, the Detroit Trojans, had such a rich draft history, having 18 players drafted since 2000, with 2 of them being first rounders, and one of those 2 first rounders being one of the best defensive players of all time. Alright, so there's actually a tie for the Trojans' highest NFL draft pick since 2000, so I have to go with the most recent option. But I do want to shout out linebacker DeMarcus Ware, who'd be selected in 2005, 11th overall to the Dallas Cowboys. He's a Super Bowl champ, 9-time Pro Bowler with 4 All-Pros, and to cap it all off, a golden jacket and a bust in Canton. So for the Trojans' other first-round pick, we have to go back to 2008 when the Buffalo Bills would select cornerback Leotis McClevin, 11th overall. While he wouldn't have quite the career of DeMarcus Ware, he still stuck around the league for 9 years, and I'm sure he made a decent bag. Alright, for the last team up in the SUNBELT Conference, we got the UL Monroe Warhawks. This program's draft history isn't anything too crazy, only having 5 players drafted into the NFL since 2000, with none of them being picked higher than the 5th round. For the Warhawks' highest NFL draft pick since 2000, we have to go all the way back to literally 2000, when the Kansas City Chiefs would select DB Pat Dennis in the 5th round, 162nd overall. Pat would play 4 years in the league, never really finding his footing, playing for a different team every single season of his NFL career, but y'all know me, I can't hate on a guy who made it to the league, especially out of the SUNBELT Conference.